For 300,000 years, humans lived in bands of 20 to 30 people. Do the math. In a group that small, after 2 generations, almost everyone should be a cousin. After 4 generations, everyone should share a great-grandparent. By modern medical standards, every marriage in that group should be a genetic disaster. It didn't happen. Ancient humans avoided the inbreeding trap so completely that scientists who dug up 34,000-year-old graves in Russia expected to find close relatives buried together. They found none. Not one. In a group that small over that many generations, that shouldn't be possible by accident. You've probably pictured cavemen as isolated bands, stuck alone in one valley, one cave, one river bend for their entire lives. If that were true, within 3 generations, every single person in that group would be having children with a cousin, or worse. The birth defect rate would climb every generation. The group would get sicker, weaker, and smaller until it disappeared. Most small, isolated populations in history that stayed closed did collapse this way. Ancient humans had every reason to end up the same way. They had no doctors, no genetic testing, no written records, tracking who was related to who. And yet, the archaeological record shows healthy, growing populations for hundreds of thousands of years. Something was actively stopping this from happening on purpose, long before anyone understood what a gene was. This isn't guesswork. In 2017, researchers from the University of Cambridge sequenced the DNA of 4 individuals buried at Sunghir, one of the oldest known burial sites in the world. They expected to find siblings or cousins. Instead, the DNA showed these people were barely related at all, even though they lived and died together as one small community. That single discovery rewrote how anthropologists think about Stone Age social life. So here's the first thing ancient humans got right. They didn't stay put. Bands of 20 to 30 people did not live in isolation. They were connected to a much larger web, sometimes hundreds of people spread across dozens of miles. And young people were expected to find partners outside their own immediate group. Anthropologists call this exogamy, which just means marrying out. It wasn't written down anywhere because nothing was written down yet. It was baked into custom, ritual, and taboo instead. The takeaway here is simple. Survival depended on staying connected to strangers, not staying safe with family. That single habit is the reason your DNA exists today instead of being wiped out 15,000 years ago. Now here's where it gets stranger. These groups weren't just occasionally bumping into neighbors and swapping partners by luck. Researchers believe there were structured systems in place, more like arranged social contracts than random encounters. Picture seasonal gatherings, shared hunting grounds, and ritual meetings where separate bands would deliberately cross paths. The jewelry and ornaments buried with people at Sunghir took enormous time and skill to make, which tells us these weren't just poor hunter-gatherers scraping by. They were investing serious effort into symbolism and ceremony, likely tied to exactly this kind of exchange between groups. In other words, ancient humans didn't just tolerate outsiders, they built entire social systems designed around finding them. This pattern didn't disappear when humans started writing history down. It shows up everywhere, in almost every culture we have records of. Nearly every human society that has ever existed has some version of an incest taboo, and most of them go even further, banning marriage within an entire clan, not just close family. The anthropologist Claude Lévi-Strauss called this humanity's shift from nature to culture, the exact moment biology stopped deciding who you could pair with and rules took over instead. In India, some communities require you to marry outside your clan, but inside your caste. In parts of the Pacific and among many indigenous groups, cousins on one side of the family are completely off limits, while cousins on the other side are considered ideal partners. The rule changes by culture, but the pattern never does. Humans have never left mate selection to chance in a small, closed group. Someone, somewhere in nearly every society drew a line and said, "Not here, go find someone else." Here's a pattern interrupt worth sitting with. Modern hunter-gatherer groups today, the closest living comparison we have to Stone Age life, followed this exact same rule. The Kungsan of the Kalahari Desert live in small bands, and researchers have found they simply do not marry within the group. Not because of a written law, but because their entire cultural definition of who counts as family blocks it before it ever becomes an option. When early European explorers reached some remote Arctic communities, they were startled to find local groups actively encouraging outsiders to pair with their women, seeing new blood entering the group as valuable, not threatening. That's not modern politeness, that's tens of thousands of years of instinct telling a small population that fresh genes mean survival. So what does all of this actually mean for how ancient humans lived day to day? It means their social world was never as small as their physical world. A band of 20 people might have shared one campsite, but they belonged to a network stretching across an entire region, tied together by marriage, ritual, and obligation. Losing touch with that network wasn't just lonely, it was a slow death sentence for the group's gene pool. Staying connected to outsiders wasn't a nice bonus of ancient life. It was the actual survival strategy, as important as fire or shelter. This also explains something bigger. Some researchers believe this is part of why Homo sapiens outlasted Neanderthals. Neanderthal populations were small and often more isolated, and some fossil evidence suggests inbreeding was a real problem for them. Modern humans, by contrast, appear to have built these wide mating networks early, which may have kept our populations healthier and more resilient exactly when it mattered most. A social habit, something invisible and undocumented, may have quietly decided which species made it and which one didn't. So the number from the start of this video makes a lot more sense now. Groups of 20 to 30 people should have collapsed under their own family tree within a few generations. Instead, they built invisible highways of marriage and ritual stretching across entire regions, moving people, ideas, and genes constantly between bands that never saw themselves as truly separate. It wasn't luck, it wasn't an accident, it was one of the oldest rules humans ever followed, and it's the reason any of us are here to talk about it. If you want more of what ancient humans figured out before anyone had a word for genetics, subscribe, because the next one covers a rule just as strange and just as important.